So hello and welcome back to the A Younger Theatre in Isolation series. My name is Ollie and I'm here today with Lizi Perry and Rachael Abbey, the artistic directors of the Hull-based company, The Roaring Girls, which is an all-female company who create their own truthful and topical work describing themselves as fierce, feminist and fun. So first of all, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I wanted to ask you guys how your lockdown experience is going.
It's been interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to put it.
Always a good way to start.
I think we live together as well as running the company together, so we've been seeing a lot of each other recently. But you know, we've survived. I think it's been difficult for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that we just started a tour and then all of a sudden it got pulled from under our feet. So. Yeah. Definitely spending a lot more time together because I should have been on the road for the last 4 months.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it.
A very completely different plan from what was initially.
Yeah, definitely.
So just for our listeners who might not have heard of you guys or the company before, how would you guys introduce yourself to them?
We're loud, we're unapologetic, we make work that is a reflection of ourselves and our society. We just want to have really honest conversations in the hope that our audiences go off and have those honest conversations with friends and family as well. For us, it's all about kind of being honest and being truthful and not being scared to say what you're actually thinking.
Yeah, nice. So just about the creation and the building of the company, how did you guys find each other? How did you find the other members of your company? What was the beginning of the story?
So Rachel and I had met at uni at the University of Hull, and then both ended up back on the master's course together. And during our master's course, we were aware that it might be useful to work together. And we were friends, but we'd never really collaborated creatively. And we thought, we'll try it out. And there was a new festival in Hull called Assemble Fest that was doing sort of pop-up shows in businesses. And we thought, that sounds like a really interesting idea. That's a good place to sort of test something out.
Yeah.
And it went really well, and it really worked. And we thought, this is good. I like doing this. Let's keep doing this. And so off the back of that, we started the Roaring Girls. And for a while, it was just the two of us.
Yeah.
Doing a bit of everything, making it up as we went along, learning as we went. And then we were joined by the rest of our team through sort of their attachment on projects, and then going, this is someone who not only do we like working with and who is good at their job, but someone who has this sort of shared values, and we feel would be a real benefit to the team. So we've got a core team of 4 running the company, with 4 associates who we sort of work with as much as we can. Most of whom have come through sort of the University of Hull and that sort of network.
Yeah, totally. And we keep on joking that over the course of about 5 different years, we've got someone who's graduated each year in the company. So it feels like it's kind of like the baton keeps on getting passed down.
Graduates.
Yeah.
Nice. And how have you guys been faring as a company during this lockdown period, and how has it affected your guys' work?
It's been a really interesting one. Like I said, we were supposed to be doing a 13-week tour, which was something that we'd been building up to for the last 3 years. It was our first national tour. We were really excited. We had over 50 dates in the diary, and we were literally travelling down to perform at Bolts Festival on the Monday, and we were due to open on the Tuesday, and we were on the train when Boris kind of went, I think theatres should be shut. And by the time that we had gotten off the train and jumped in an Uber to our digs for the week, pretty much the entire tour was cancelled.
Yeah, the festival, we were talking on the train of, should we be encouraging audiences to come together? And by the time we got to where we were staying, the last week festival was cancelled. And so it started out on this really bad note. It's devastating because we'd worked so hard. This project is something we've been working on for nearly 3 years, and it just sort of crumbled around us, and we really didn't know what we were going to do. It also obviously has affected our plans for the future, and sort of the momentum that we hope to sort of get from the tour, and then move into an R&D and make something really awesome towards the end of the year. And so it's really sort of shifted gears and really shifted our perspectives a lot. But we are really fortunate in that we got we were successful in getting some Arts Council money for the emergency grants.
You guys managed to do that,
which has been a real lifesaver, because I think otherwise we would have just had to sort of tread water, and it would just be sort of stasis for a year probably, whilst we waited to be able to do something. So it's drastically changed plans, but the money means that we can spend this time working on company structure, getting everything in place to sort of move forward. And also we're doing a digital R&D, which is slightly terrifying that we've not done anything sort of digitally before. So I don't know how it's going to work, but it's really exciting because we actually get to try something out and to make something and to explore something, which I realise is a huge privilege at this time. So we're really grateful to be able to do that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it's so amazing that you guys got that funding. Like, congratulations, really like brilliant precedent to your company that you got that now. And I did want to ask about that digital R&D that I saw you guys are doing. How is that going to be, like, doing an R&D digitally? Like, what do you think that's going to be like?
I think it's going to be tiring.
Yeah. And we talked about kind of Zoom fatigue, which a lot of people, is a real thing.
Yeah.
And kind of being able to make sure that people are getting appropriate breaks, and making sure that people that are just sat looking at a screen for 8 hours a day, because that's not good for anyone and it's not useful. So we're currently kind of having to find that balance and figure out exactly the best way to work it. A lot of the work that we do anyway, when we're devising, we literally will have like a chat for maybe like an hour or two, and then we kind of split off anyway and do our own thing for a bit. So maybe that's write a response, or think about certain topics, or whatever that might be. So I feel like it's going to be a lot of that.
Yeah, so I think we'll have a lot of together, take a break, go and work alone, come back together, share. I think it's something that I think we're going to have to sort of rely on each other to be honest about the difficulties, and when we're struggling, and when because it's so difficult, to be able to gauge someone's reaction when you're on the other side of a screen. But also, like, I mean, speaking personally, I'm definitely like a spatial thinker, and to be able to, normally when we work together, we lie on the floor and we roll out huge sheets of paper and we all draw and write on things, and we cover walls with post-it notes and all these things that we can't do. And there are digital versions that we can share, but it's not this, it's not tactile. It's really, it really makes a difference. So I think that's going to be a real challenge in terms of, I think it's just going to be different in terms of the experience of it, and how we manage to share things, and how they feel shared, and they don't feel like this is a thing that I have done. And this is a thing that you have done, and how we make them feel like a shared thing.
Yeah, totally.
But I think it's a really exciting thing to try out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it opens up more opportunities, I think. So like one of the things that I've really found from lockdown is like I've been part of kind of a national conversation more. You don't have to be in the same room as people. You don't have to pack out to get on a train, to get to London, to get to Manchester, to get to Birmingham, wherever. Like, you don't have to, feel like you shouldn't be there. So with these, it feels really like equal, and everyone's kind of on the same level, and we kind of go, right, this is where we're at, let's talk about it.
Yeah, that's so true. And the show that you guys are planning on developing is one about menstruation and periods. And do you know what kind of like route you're going to go down, or is it still very much like, we haven't started the R&D, so we're just going to go in like blind and see what happens kind of thing?
Not totally blind.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a vibe that we're going for, and we're definitely going for kind of like a cabaret kind of fun.
Cool. Want it to feel fun and messy and kind of glitzy. We're really keen on, one of the things we wanted to do off the back of the successes in Beachbody Ready was really up the visuals and the design aspect. So we've sort of embedded a designer in the R&D, as well as, rather than just doing an R&D not without thinking about design, but without consulting a designer and then getting them involved for the making, to bring her in and be able to have her part of those initial conversations, so that we can really make it feel a bit bigger. So that's sort of a cabaret feeling, like intimate and glitzy, but also really messy and vulgar. But really open to seeing how it goes and seeing the people in the room.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of the beauty of it, is that we may well go in with those intentions, and who knows what's going to come out of it.
Yeah, I think we're not holding ourselves to anything at this point.
Yeah. Just wanting to talk a bit more about like theatre becoming more digital in general. Do you guys think that there's going to be a bit more of a move towards like a more digital kind of theatre, and what are your feelings about that?
I think so. Yeah. I think that this period has shown how fragile a lot of the systems that theatre relies on are, both in terms of like the funding structures and the way that work is made and shown, and you know, it all feels very precarious right now. And I think that, I mean, I'm not a public health expert, but this feels like this isn't going to be the last time that we're in a similar scenario to this. And so I think we all need to be, we've talked a lot about becoming more sustainable in terms of our funding and in terms of our reliance on sort of traditional models as a company. So I think that's going to be a conversation that's had by everyone. And I think a huge part of that is going to be digital. In terms of digital skills, like being able to do an R&D digitally is going to be part of that learning and that growth. But also I think people are going to realise the necessity of getting really good quality recording for your show, rather than just, we'll stick a camera at the back and that'll be, we've recorded it for our record, you know, because you can't really use that. So I think people are going to have to, I think it's going to have to shift that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a really interesting one, because especially in the kind of theatre that we make, it's very, very dependent on the audiences, and there's a lot of responses, and we really feed off that. And so doing the show online without a physical audience there feels really weird. So we've been doing a bit of like playing around, and like we've been doing quizzes and like murder mysteries and things like that online, where we can still have that kind of conversation with the audience, and they can type in the comments and they can really feel involved in it. But it's still a really tricky situation, like being able to find a way to present a show and still have those audience responses. Like, you know, when you see a stand-up comedian on like a recorded video, it's got an audience, it's not them just in a black box by themselves. I feel like it'd be really disconcerting if they were.
Like pause for laughter.
Well, you feed off your audience, don't you? So it would be so difficult to try and do that without one.
I think a huge part of it is what's wrong with what we're doing now. What can we do better? But a part of it is just adapt to survive. Like we can't do anything. Well, we possibly could get into rehearsal rooms sort of shortly, but there's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of guide. You know, you've got to be able to do something differently. You've got to be able to use digital skills. So let's give it a go.
Yeah. And well, you guys have already got some digital content online through like your podcast and everything. When did that start, and like how has that been helpful to your like process and stuff?
So we started the podcast a few years ago now, and it's something that we always did as a New Year's resolution. Like, we're going to do the podcast properly this year, and then something would inevitably happen and it would kind of like trail off. And this year I think we've actually been able to give it the dedicated time that it deserves. So we started really kind of making sure that we were putting something out every month from the beginning of this year. And we talk about everything. We've just also started doing interview podcasts that go alongside it. So we'll be talking about, so one of the things we talked about was menstruation, and we had a massive conversation amongst us, but then we actually talked to some clinical researchers from the local university to kind of get their opinion and their thoughts on everything. And being able to talk to someone who like has a lot more knowledge is really like interesting. Again, it's us, we're very chatty and we're very kind of informal anyway. But being able to talk to people who, you know, have a really clear understanding and, you know, are doing this research and doing all these amazing things, to be able to bring them on and have a chat is really lovely.
Yeah. I think, as Rachel said when we were talking about our work, like a huge part of that is the conversation, and the you know, the whole idea that we want it, the subjects that we talk about as a company, the things we want to make work about, is about things that you might talk about with your mate that you don't necessarily have a big discussion about, or turn to the stranger next to you, and sort of facilitating those conversations. And so the podcast is really becoming like a way that we can do that. Like, we have the conversation with ourselves, but then people chat about it online and they send us messages, and we're sort of finding a way to keep that thread of things going.
Yeah, must be really helpful for like your research and like development process as well, like just being able to like get all of these like voices and like have chats with everyone about it. Yeah, for sure. Just moving on, I just want to talk about Beachbody Ready, and just kind of, because I like obviously haven't seen the show but would love to when it gets rebooked, and you guys have obviously been postponed, which is really sad, but the show looks amazing, and I think it addresses a lot of like really important issues around body image and mental health. And yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about firstly how the process of reorganizing the tour is going, and secondly, like what kind of measures do you think you'll have to have in place in the venues? Like, do you think you'll have to have social distancing still in the venues, and like how that will affect the show?
In terms of the rebooking of the tour, I mean, shout out to our amazing producer, Shauna McLean. She's done a stellar job of managing, not just cancelling a tour, but working out what could be rebooked. And then going back to other places and saying, hey, you know, we're doing it at this time, we'd still love to come to you. So it's it has been a big task.
It's been reduced by a third as well as the tour now. By 2/3, sorry. So it was originally kind of 3 months work over the space of 4 months. And now it's one very jam-packed month.
It was sort of worked out on how, you know, in terms of how we finance it and how, you know, all the logistics work of that. Okay, this is the month that we can do it. We can do it in March. So how many of those dates can we get booked? Which ones do we really want to go to? There were a few venues that we were keen to visit, and there were a few that had already sold really well for this year's tour, and we prioritized those ones. So it's really disappointing to not get to as many, but I think we've got a really interesting mix still of venues, so that's really exciting. And a lot of them, you know, they're in the same boat as us, where they've had to cancel work and they've had to reorganize things. So a lot of the venues are really keen to get things back up and running and to get people back in. So we are really excited to go and do them.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be an interesting one if we have to socially distance on stage. I mean, there's like, within the show, we don't actually like physically have to touch each other, I don't think, anymore. So it's kind of like, technically it could happen. It'd be certainly interesting to see us, especially as like we've got quick changes and things like that, and trying to do those like socially distant like backstage would be an interesting experience. But I also think there is a real effect on the kind of experience that you get when you have to socially distance on stage, especially for a show that isn't made for it. And our show really does have that kind of, it really ends on that moment of togetherness and, you know, feeling united, and having to do that 2 meters apart feels very strange.
Well, it's like, even if you're meeting someone and you have to sort of not touch them or give them a hug, and like if you're trying to have a show that's quite intimate and like personal, and you want to like have a connection with the audience, then being
massively
like, meters away must feel very
at the end of the show, we always have a queue of people waiting to give us a hug or to talk to us afterwards. So again, that would feel really weird, being like, I can't actually hug you or talk to you really that much, like, sorry. Like, we really kind of make sure that we don't leave our audiences hanging afterwards. We want to be like, you know, we're here to talk, like, here's like references for organisations you might want to contact if you want to talk about it further, or whatever that might be. So we really kind of look after our audiences post-show. So yeah, not being able to do that would be very, very weird.
I think that I mean, we don't know. It's things are changing all the time, so I think it's difficult to be able to predict what's going to happen in March. You know, fingers crossed things will be open. Fingers crossed we can go ahead. I think it's likely there'll be something in place. We were offered as part of we was discussed as part of the rebooking as to whether we wanted to do a venue. Asked us if we would do the show this summer in August, which I don't think would have gone ahead anyway, but in August with a socially distanced crowd, and we said no because we felt that thing of the atmosphere, the vibe, the feeling of, oh, we're all together, you could turn to the stranger next to you and say, oh my god, that's happened to me, is a really important part of the show. And I think that if we have to have distanced crowds and there are spaces, then it's something that's manageable. And I think the nature of the show being sort of semi-improvised and really chatty is that we can address it and we can comment on it. But I think it's if we're going to have people sat, you know, in pairs or threes and then a big gap, it's going to feel different because you're going to feel more spaced out. And I think it's going to be harder for us to get that feeling in the room. Hopefully not impossible, but I think it's going to be a different challenge. So I think it's something we're aware of and something that I think we're in a good position to be able to manage because it's not a super strict script.
No, not at all.
And it's don't trust you guys with that.
We love to improv, let's just put it that way.
Like it's not strict. Yeah, so I think like what you guys were saying about it being an incredibly like truthful show about like coming together. I mean, you guys said yourselves, we have been shamed, dehumanized and humiliated for how we look and we've had enough. I mean, that's such a powerful central message of the show. And I just think it's really great that you guys are tackling like these issues. And I think it must be so difficult to have had that, like, especially that venue coming and saying, oh, we want you to socially distance for the show. You're like, no, like it's not. It can't work like without this togetherness. And I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the Beachbody directory and the Zine, where you sort of compiled like all this amazing information and also like support from like charities and like even Instagram pages or books that people can read. Like, can you just like tell our listeners a bit more about these?
Sure. I think that it came from a really natural place of wanting to be this moment of opening conversation and wanting to say, hey, we've chatted now, we've shared our experiences, you go talk about yours, you know, you go chat with your friends and your family and put your stuff online. You know, this is a moment that we want to inspire and provoke and say, hey, you know, your voice is worth adding to this conversation. But also really aware of the limits of what we can talk about. There's 3 people on stage, and if we're going to talk about body image, it's got to be about our experiences and the experiences of the 3 actors. And that the more that you talk about other people's experiences, the more it becomes like a presentation. If you're like, let me tell you what some people have experienced. Let me bring up some data and tell you a story about a friend of mine. You know, and it becomes so much more distance and less human. And so, okay, we've got to strip it back to just what can we talk about? What are our experiences, or what are your experiences as the actors? And then, okay, well, what are the limits of that? What stories aren't we telling? And so the idea was to say, hey, these are 3 stories. We're going to give you something to take away that's got another, I can't remember how many we had, 6 or 7 stories in, and, you know, another lot of experiences. Something that is, I mean, getting free stuff in a show is always great anyway, but something you can take home that's visual, that will...
Tactile.
Yeah. That will sit in your handbag or go on your coffee table and be like a little reminder, hey, remember us, have this conversation. So it does 2 things. It prods you and says, hey, talk about me, talk about you. And it goes, okay, here's 3 experiences that you've seen sort of performed. Here's another lot of experiences that you've got in your hands to keep. And here's a list of other places to find more, to sort of diversify the experiences and the voices that we're promoting.
Yeah. And it's just like so important, I think, like you said, having an open conversation and like expanding the conversation. Have you had any like good feedback from people on like the directing and design? Like also the fact that it's online now, I think is so amazing. Like the fact that I could just like go and access it, like is really great. So like it's much more accessible. Have you had any people come back and be like, this has been amazing, like super helpful?
We've had a lot of people that have sort of shared pictures of like you know, that have used it as like a, hey, I've seen the show, and like it's like a little symbol of like something really visual to say, look, this is the, I've got to talk to you about this, which is really nice. You know, we always get a lot of things from people, both in person, like you guys get a lot of people come up to you and talk to you immediately afterwards, but a lot of stuff online sort of afterwards, or a couple of days afterwards, after people have digested it and they go, oh, I really identified with that. So I think the zine has been a really important part of that, as being a provocation and being a little visual reminder.
Yeah, totally. And being able to, like I said, just have that kind of physical thing like there in front of you to reference. Because we've got other shows in there that we really recommend seeing and things like that. And when we put our trailer online, weirdly enough, when we actually paid to promote it, it got promoted to a really odd group of people.
Oh, really?
And we ended up getting a lot of abuse. And like some really horrific things were written. You know, things like, oh, you're taking beds away from children with cancer, like that fat people are doing this, and it's disgusting, like why are you promoting this? And we had one person go, oh, women are always talking about this, where's the men represented? And we were like, if you came to see the show, you'd get the zine, and that's got a full directory in it.
Yeah, like, well, I can tell you if you come and take the zine.
A really important part of what we were doing was that we weren't saying, we've just discovered this issue and we're the people talking about it. That we were like, hey, loads of people are talking about it. We want to, you know, let's join the conversation. And so like being able to go, especially when we're in Edinburgh, being able to go, hey, these are the other shows that we've heard about that are going up. Some of them we've seen and they're awesome, you know, and to be able to point people in those directions, and it's not a competition. We're doing the same thing. We're adding voices to that same conversation. So that, so to be able to go to people going, oh, well, you're not talking about my experiences, to go, well, maybe you'd relate more to X, Y, or Z. You know, it's all, that's fine.
It's all valid, don't worry.
So that's been useful as well.
And I think bringing up like a lot of important issues, especially you guys mentioning like the charities like that you listed in the directory in the zine, like just like being able to have kind of a platform for mental health support and stuff for everyone. Like I feel like especially like in lockdown, where everyone's sort of mental health situation has been intense, I think, for most people. And like I kind of just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about those who like are suffering from issues with body image and eating disorders like during lockdown. Like, do you think that it's been sort of this huge extra pressure placed on them?
Massively. Like the amount of fat phobia that has come out during lockdown is staggering.
Lockdown body.
How
are you going to shift those pounds that you've put on because you've rested for 5 minutes? Like
it's insane. Like, I mean, you know, your body will change during lockdown. You know, you're not moving as much. You know, a lot of people are comfort eating. Like, things will change. That's fine. Like, that's not a problem.
And you can change them back if you want, or you can accept that. You know, it's just so much. There's so much that's pressure about it, and also I think because if you're not working, you know, if you've been furloughed, or you're not working right now, or even if you're just you know, at home a bit more than normal, you find yourself on Twitter more and Instagram more, you know, looking at those things, and suddenly it's
time, like
so much more that you've got that time to be pestered by adverts and and
you know, and people feel, oh, I can really commit to the diet because I've got time to prep all the food and do all this, or you know, I've really got the time to exercise, so people are exercising more, and it goes either way.
I mean, I think just generally, I mean, you know, body image is obviously a huge part of that, but I think just generally, you know, it's taken a toll on people's mental health, and I think that it's really good to acknowledge that. I think it's something that isn't, I mean, is more and more talked about, but for a lot of people is something that is brushed under the table or not talked about, or who may not have really stopped and considered, oh, this is my mental health and it's not doing great right now. And then to be suddenly in lockdown and furloughed and go, oh, I'm confronting this for the first time, I think it can be really difficult. And I think what's really nice is that people are talking about it, and there are conversations happening online, and there are resources being shared, which I think is a really positive step. It's not all great, but baby steps, things going in the right direction. You know, and I've definitely seen a lot more from, you know, people like Samaritans and Mind sort of responding to people on Twitter, even just as simple as that, and to just remind people that they're out there.
Yeah, totally. And like just being able to kind of have those conversations, whether it is with a charity like Mind or Samaritans, or whether it's just a friend, like, you know, this is unprecedented, and it is a weird and confusing, and everyone's going, what on earth is happening time? You know, you're going to want to talk about it. And I understand, like, loads of people are kind of like, I'm past talking about it, I don't want to think about it anymore. But it is just something that is around us all the time at the moment. And being able to talk about it is a really healthy thing.
And so important. Like, it's a crazy changing time. And like, I think especially for theatre, you know, like we've mentioned all these like massive changes to theatre in the lockdown period, like in regards to sort of funding, and like this kind of move to a weird kind of digital rehearsal, like performance space, as well as like a serious strain on like the mental health of, I think, society in general. And I just wanted to ask you guys, like, do you think that the theatre industry after this strange time will be like permanently changed?
Yes.
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people in the industry have really kind of banded together and gone, look, we all knew that the old model was not necessarily working. Like, we do have an opportunity here to change things and to rethink about things. And, you know, a lot of my friends who are working in the sector are going, I did not realise how much I just pushed and pushed and pushed and didn't think about my own well-being or anything like that. And actually, like, they've not worked for however many months and gone, it's not worth like the amount of stress, the amount of hassle, and like actually what I want to focus on is myself and focus on my friends and family, my health. And how do we find that balance between working in theatre, which is naturally very you know, it's late nights and early mornings, it's a lot of, you know, very intense work. How do we balance that with leading healthy kind of regular lives?
And I think we've seen a lot of, I mean, you know, there are theatres that have gone into administration and who are really struggling, you know, venues and big organisations that aren't going to come back, or if they come back are going to be drastically different. And I think that it's obviously genuinely really sad for organisations and for venues to close, and we do, you know, I do want them to survive, but also it's a time to go, okay, if we're bringing things back, if we're building things back up, okay, let's build them back better. Yes, we want a vibrant arts venue, you know, in our city, but it's got to reflect the community in which it sits. It's got to offer support for its workers, for its freelancers, for its, you know, casual staff. It's got to be accountable to itself. It's got to be better sort of representative in terms of you know, racial diversity and access to disabled artists and disabled audiences, etc., etc., etc. You know, I think it would be really sad if we go, oh, we can reopen, let's go back to it, quick, let's get everything back up and running and go back to as it was, because I think, you know, things have got to shift. We can do better, and this is an opportunity to do that, to make those changes.
Exactly, we're a creative industry. If we can't find a creative solution, what's going on?
Yeah, that's so true. That's unfortunately all we're going to have time for today, but on that positive note of, I think, change and where we're going to go, it's been really lovely talking to you guys today, and I hope you have an all right rest of your lockdown period.
Thank you.
You too.
Yeah.